Let me first start out by telling you what irritates me, okay? So what irritates me is that a lot of people are commoditizing coaching certifications. We think we're putting too much value in a certification, a piece of paper that says, I passed some test, therefore I can coach you. And society has always really valued certification for good reason. Doctors need to pass their exams and lawyers need to pass the bar. And, before you move into a profession, you need to get training. And that's great. The problem is the coaching market isn't governed by anybody. And that means that there's a lot of, it's like the Wild West. And so anybody can say anything. Anybody can sell a coaching certification online for $25 or something shorter than that. But smaller than that. But the bigger issue here is what we think it requires to be a coach. Now, let me take a step back and say, in business, I mean, if you want to be a coach and you want to be have a successful coaching business, then you have to understand a very important piece about business. You can't out-market a bad product. It's like in health. You can't out-exercise a bad diet. If you don't eat right, you can't out-exercise that. If you have a bad product in business, you can't out-market that. You can't outsell that. So in coaching, you are the product. And I'm not coming from this place of ego saying that I'm better than anybody else or our certification is better than anybody else. I just want you to understand that one of the most important pieces of being a successful coach is your certainty in the product, and you are the product. So you have to have the confidence that you can go out and actually help people. So the most important piece of a successful coaching business is being a good coach. If you're not a good coach and you don't have confidence, then people will see that, they'll smell that, they'll feel that. And I say that because there are so many coaches who are frustrated because they are learning a lot of marketing programs and they're learning 6-figure or 7-figure templates of how to market your business. And they try to follow the templates and it doesn't work. And it's because the confidence isn't there. It's because the product isn't there. Or you learn how to do certain things on social media, but there's something internal that's causing you to actually not follow through and not do the videos or not know what to say in your articles or in your blog or what have you. So I'm saying this from a place of support. If you feel like you've been struggling in your coaching business, then we got to look at the product. Here's what I know. People who are so connected to personal transformation will not allow themselves to not get clients. So what I mean by that is once you get to this place of knowing what it's like to actually transform your mind and your behavior at a neurological level, I'll touch on that in a second. When you understand what that's like and you understand what it feels like to see the world through different lenses and what it feels like to not have triggers anymore in your body and what it feels like to not have the fears that you used to have, you will not allow yourself to not share that with other people. So if you're not succeeding in your coaching business, I can virtually guarantee you don't have the body for transformation yet. Because when you have the body for transformation, nothing can stop you. If you're struggling to put up a website, if you're struggling to motivate yourself to get in front of the camera, if you're struggling over these obstacles that are in your way, I can tell you, you haven't touched the roots of your humanity yet. You haven't touched transformation yet, because that kind of energy is so abundant and it's so much more powerful than whatever the intellectual obstacles are that they can't hold you back. So when most people I hear about or talk to are telling me that they're struggling because they're afraid to get on camera, or they just don't know what to put on their website, or they tried social media marketing, or they're hiring other people to write their articles for them, and whatever it is they're trying isn't working, my reaction and my advocacy always says, listen, You don't have the body for this. You don't yet have the body for this. Business is messy. By itself, business is messy. If you have a fantastic product that you believe in and you create a business to try to sell that product, it's messy for most people. It's difficult. In this case, coaching is the product. You are the product, which means it's messy on top of messy. It's exponentially messy because we're dealing with humanity. We're dealing with personal transformation. And what pisses me off is that we try to commoditize personal transformation. We try to say, here's a 1, 2, 3 process for bliss, for living a joy-filled life, for happiness, for success, for making a bunch of money. Anytime we have an assembly line approach for a human being, it's going to be BS because we are such complex animals. Our minds are changing all the time. We've dealt with all kinds of different experiences. We have such a unique collection of beliefs and decisions and embodied trauma and all the things that come with a unique human experience. And then you're going to try to tell me that you have an assembly line, one size fits all, turnkey approach to fix this complex human being? There is no way that there will ever be the same answer for two different humans. So if you want to be a transformational coach, you have to understand individual humanity. And what frustrates me so much is that we try to put humanity into this intellectual box. We try to put humanity into this one-size-fits-all approach. Now, why do we do that? Because it's clean, because it sounds easy. The intellect wants to know that A plus B always equals C. Well, A plus B might equal C unless A is a human. And then if A is a human, then we don't have any idea what A plus B is going to be until we dive into that humanity. So I'm saying this from a service advocacy kind of place, that if you really have the guts, if you have the heart, if you feel like you've been designed to be put on this planet, if you have a soul's obligation to help people shift their humanity, then you have to dive into studying humanity. And the way you do it is you study it through yourself. Most people, in my experience, and again, this isn't coming from ego and I'm better than anybody else, or this is better than that. It's if you don't have the body to lead people through their own transformation, then the best thing you can do is try to fool them on the front end and get a bunch of customers early, with your sales techniques and tactics. And most coaches don't like selling. And then hopefully you can just get a bunch of people on the front end, but you're going to have a facade of a business. When you get to the point where you feel like you have shifted your neurological transformations. We've all seen some version of the iceberg photo, right? There's a very small percentage of an iceberg above water. Most of us are playing the intellectual game. How do I intellectually change my life? What's the 1, 2, 3 approach to making more money? What are the rules to be better in relationships? All of those kinds of approaches are playing above the surface. It's like you're snorkeling. If you're snorkeling, you only got that little tube, right? You can't go very far under the water, but look at the depths of the ocean and the depths of the sea that you can't get to when all you have is a snorkeling tube. That's our humanity. We have so much complex issues, conflicts, decisions, programming, beliefs, values, all these things that are going on at a deep, deep level of our humanity. If you want to play that game, you have to be willing to scuba dive. You can't try to snorkel and understand how to change humanity. Now, I believe that where our society is going is pulling us away from our humanity. The way that we're being programmed by our smartphones, by the apps, by social media, by the internet, the way that we are being programmed by artificial intelligence, robotics, all these things, for a lot of us, are pulling us away from our human experience. What we need, in my opinion, going forward, is to turn us around and pull us back into our human experience. Now, that's somewhat of a messy journey because we're going to go dive back into our beliefs and our decisions and our pain and our traumas and all the things that all of this intellectual programming is trying to get us away from. But my question is, have we actually lived a human experience if we don't ever touch our humanity, if we don't ever touch our sacred pain, if we don't ever touch our trauma, if we spend all of our lives trying to protect ourselves from feeling human, have we actually had a human experience here? Now, the good news is we can heal anything. There is no human pain. There is no human trauma. There is no amount of suffering. There's no amount of emotional stuckness. There's no amount of grief. There's no amount of painful beliefs. There's no amount of human pain that cannot be healed. But most people won't do the work. I've yet to find a human that can't be healed, but I run into all the time, most of humans won't do the work to heal, and they'll spend the rest of their lives just numbing themselves from whatever pain they're afraid of, whether it's drugs and alcohol or shopping or sex or success or whatever it is they're trying to do to pull themselves out of the human experience. So my jam, what I'm a geek about, is neurological transformation. Let's dive down under the water. Let's get into humanity. Let's roll up these sleeves and let's say, what can we do to heal this human? What can we do to dive into the pain, to dive into the belief conflicts, to dive into the values that's causing this particular person to not enjoy life, that's causing this particular person to have fears that once upon a time he or she didn't have. Most of us don't have. Most of us are being held captive by fears that are not natural for us. They are learned. So how many of us go to our graves with unspent potential because of fears that this brain created at a certain point in time that are not natural for us? They're not at our core. They were made up to protect us from pain, and we'll live the rest of our lives protecting ourselves from pain, but in the process, protecting ourselves, protecting ourselves from love, protecting ourselves from our humanity, and protecting ourselves from the exact solutions that will make the problems go away. So if you are interested and committed to that kind of a human experience for yourself and for other people, you have to be willing to do the work. You have to be willing to cape up. You have to be willing to heal yourself, whatever that means for your life and however you've been programmed. Every single person on this planet can revert back to the factory settings before we were afraid of judgment, before we were seeking approval, before we had gotten hurt in a relationship or from our parents or from our siblings. Every single one of us can revert back to this place where we actually are a spiritual source of love and bliss and joy and all these things that most of us are trying to get externally. The answer to joy as a human, the answer to love, the answer to success is not external. It's not going to come from anything external that we ingest in our mouths or that we put in front of our eyes or that we try to put into our brain or coming out of the mouths of other people. Nothing real, nothing sacred is going to come from outside sources. And yet, I would say pretty much all of society is seeking external source for happiness. That's why it doesn't last. That's why when you find your value in the approval of somebody else, as soon as they're no longer in front of you saying, I approve of you, your approval goes away. If you find your value in the success at a job or in the money in your bank account or on the in the numbers on the scale, if you find your success in any of those external sources, it cannot last because it's surface level. Hang on a second. I got to take a little bit of a drink. So the answer to all of this is from inside source, which is great because we all have it, and it's an abundant, infinite source of energy. So my commitment is that work. My commitment is neurotransformation, helping people make a change in their neurology. That means fears that used to be there aren't there anymore. Happiness that used to not be there is there. It's uncovered. Confidence in just being yourself, living a life of bliss, living a life of internally sourced happiness, living a life of confidence, living a life the way I believe we were all meant to live, and I believe we all deserve to live. That's all possible if we understand how to change the neurological conflicts. That's really all we're dealing with. There's nobody that is missing a chromosome or missing some kind of puzzle piece to happiness and success. It's just that we've got things all convoluted. We came up with decisions about who we are and if the world is safe, and money and success and all these things have convoluted our lives, and it's complicated things. The answer is actually quite simple. We just have to understand how to untie the knots. What actually saddens me to no end is the fact that most humans are not willing to untie the knots, or they don't understand that the knots can be untied. And so the best thing that they can do is just numb themselves from the experiences that the knots are creating. I want to give myself, I want to give all of our clients the experience of untying these knots and sourcing love and joy and happiness and success and connection from a place that's internal. All of that is possible. That's what I mean by a neurological transformation. So I have an online certification program. It's called Breakthrough Coaching Certification. It is transformational coaching. That's what it is. We got to dive into humanity. We got to understand how this brain is wired. We have to understand how the brain created the beliefs so that we can uncreate the beliefs. We got to understand how the brain creates values conflicts so we can uncreate values conflicts. And most of society is just looking for the numbing effect. How can we avoid touching the triggers? I'm not interested in avoiding touching the triggers. I'm interested in removing the triggers. That's the difference between coping and clearing. Every single one of us can clear what we no longer want in our body, but most people won't. We'll just search for coping mechanisms in some way, shape, or form. So I have an online coaching program. It's one of the most amazing things that I'm proud of. I am so proud of this program because of the time and energy and all the stuff that we put into it, but because of the tribe that it has been created by this program, because a lot of the results that have come out of this program. Oxford told us not too long ago that because of the awareness that he had, he went in and pitched an $11,000 coaching speaking program, and he got that. Mondre said that he came after the program. He got like 5 paying clients, and he hadn't gotten any paying clients before that. What it will give you is the awareness of how to play with this brain, how to maneuver, how to untie all these knots, and how to create neurological shifts for yourself and for other people. And here's what I'll tell you. Once you get the taste of that, you can't ever turn it off. Turn off the desire to change people's lives with just some sounds that are going to come out of your mouth. So that's what I'm inviting all of you into. Give it a shot. Here's my invitation. Test it. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong that once you get a taste of being able to shift your own neurology and shift other people's neurology, that you're not going to be hooked and addicted and have such a driving force inside of you to heal people, to help people shift everything in their lives, that is not going to be able to overcome all the intellectual obstacles that pretty much stop everybody. So every time I hear somebody that's being stopped by an intellectual obstacle, that tells me they haven't touched their neurology. They haven't touched their humanity. Your spirit will always overpower your intellect. So if your intellect is stopping you, that means you haven't touched your spiritual power. And I'm not talking about religious necessarily. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm talking about the human soul's spirit. I'm talking about the desire inside to serve, to help, and that will overcome any intellectual obstacles. So if there's something stopping you up here, that means you haven't engaged down here.